It's great to be here with you today, and thanks to our illustrious but sometimes bumbling Food and Drug Administration, I have a breaking news story to talk about. And if you'll just roll that tape, here's what it's about, and then we'll talk about it. You're going to be amazed by this. CBS News aired this a couple of weeks ago. This is just a couple of minutes long, so bear with us. Here we go.
Looking out for you. This is 11 News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Anita Lopez.
And I'm Brian Custer. In a country where authors can publish recipes to make bombs and put pornography across the internet, the federal government has banned a cookbook.
The cookbook, which uses an herb which sells in health food stores as a dietary supplement, but now the FDA says it's not safe as a food ingredient. And 11 News reporter Mike Tobin talks with the Arlington author who says the government is stepping on his First Amendment rights.
My question is, why is a federal agency banning a cookbook?
The reason James Kirkland's cookbook has been banned is because it's a book about cooking with stevia. Stevia is an herb native to South America. From it, you can extract a non-sugar sweetener. But according to Kirkland, the FDA says you can't cook with it or even buy the recipes.
They're using this as an attempt to stop the use of this herb. It's not really they're trying to prevent material. They're trying to stop us from informing the public on how to use an herb.
There it is.
Kirkland says the FDA has approved stevia as a dietary supplement, making it legal and safe for human consumption. But the FDA has not approved it as a food ingredient. The way it's written about in the cookbook, it's an ingredient. So the FDA came to the Stevia company in Arlington, the only distributor of stevia in Texas, and shelved not only the books, but the product itself. Are you able to pay the rent?
No, not very much longer. No. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying he asked why they're doing it.
So today, Kirkland and Oscar Rhodes took their problem to Congressman Joe Barton's town hall meeting because Barton chairs one of the committees overseeing the FDA.
Based on what he said, I think he's got an excellent point that he should be allowed to distribute that, and we'll get with the FDA and take a look at it.
And in a country where the anarchist cookbook, which has recipes for bombs, can be published along with pornography because it's free speech protected by the First Amendment, Kirkland will continue to fight to win the right to publish recipes with a sugar substitute.
And the people advocating the use of stevia say some of these other books, which look more into the history and use of stevia, have been banned as well. The argument from the FDA is that they advocate using stevia as a conventional food.
Now, Mike, stevia is legal to buy. What would you use it for?
Well, mostly diabetics use it in place of sugar. It tastes a lot like saccharin, but it is sold as a dietary supplement like vitamins and not as a food ingredient like sugar is.
Okay, thanks so much. Mike Tobin reporting live from our Fort Worth newsroom. Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
You saw it here first. Breaking news story. And guess what? Here is the banned cookbook. The Food and Drug Administration, and I have the letter to prove it, wanted these cookbooks destroyed. The author of the cookbooks, or the distributor rather, Oscar Rhodes in Arlington, Texas. By the way, the Rhodes family and I have been friends for the past 8 or 9 years now. And when I heard about this, I thought, what on earth are they thinking? The FDA wants to destroy books. They want books burned. And when you call the FDA, they say, we don't want books burned. And yet in the letter it said, Food and Drug Administration agents have to be there to witness the destruction of these books. Now, the cookbook wasn't the only book that they objected to. That's Cooking with Stevia. They also wanted to ban the Stevia story. Chapter 4 of this book is titled, What's Wrong with FDA? And we believe that FDA is trying to suppress criticism of itself by these actions, very Gestapo-type actions against these people who Mr. Rhodes grew up in Brazil under the reign of a military junta regime, and he left Brazil and came to this country for freedom. And this is the way he's treated in this country. All he wanted to do is bring his sweetener with him. Just an innocent little herb. I tell people mint used to grow in the flower beds where I grew up near Houston, Texas, and people would crumble it up and put it in their tea. Now they put it in gums and a lot of foods mixed with chocolate. It tastes kind of good. But this herb is no different. There are no studies showing harm by stevia, and yet here's a pack of stevia, and here is a pack of the blue sugar. These are pharmaceutical sweetener. Pardon me, this is a pharmaceutical sweetener. This is a natural herb that you cannot call a sweetener. If you do, you are in violation of a law. And God help you. This is the sweetener that can't call itself a sweetener. It's a dietary supplement, thank you very much. According to the Food and Drug Administration, they don't even want it to be a dietary supplement, but it kind of sneaked in under the Dietary Health Education Act, the DSHEA Act in 1994. This one, on the other hand, I've been researching for the past 12 years. I had a personal reaction. I developed a life-threatening blood disorder to aspartame. At the same time, my daughter was becoming more and more ill with migraine headaches, chest pain, very severe chest pain, heart attack symptoms, and eventually they carried her in from a school field trip after having suffered a grand mal seizure. Crystal Light had come in the mail as sample packets. She liked it, I didn't. It tasted metallic to me, so I left it alone. When I got her off of that one thing in her life that she had begun to use, 3 or 4 glasses a day, she got well. That was 12 years ago. No more problems since that time if she leaves it alone. And I am here to tell you by personal experience, the blue packet sweetener can be deadly. Now, the makers of aspartame, not content or satisfied because they've lost the patent on it to just produce aspartame, but they have recently applied for approval for a new pharmaceutical drug. We call it a drug, it's a sweetener in their opinion, called neotame. Now what is neotame? Neotame is aspartame plus dimethylbutyl. Dimethylbutyl shows up on the internet on the EPA hazardous chemical list. Aspartame is bad enough, as is, thank you. Aspartame's 50% phenylalanine, 40% aspartic acid, which caused holes in the brains of lab animals. Phenylalanine can lower the seizure threshold in some individuals, like my daughter. Funny thing is, those individuals don't know who they are until this happens. But then phenylalanine and aspartic acid break down further into 10% methanol by weight. Methanol is wood alcohol. That breaks down further into formaldehyde, formic acid, the venom in ant stings. Formaldehyde, of course, is embalming fluid. Diketopiperazine, the thing which is really the most troubling to me, and it was to the Soft Drink Manufacturers Association too back in the 70s. That is the brain tumor agent. The laboratory animals fed DKP developed brain tumors, and very specific kinds of brain tumors that are showing up in the population today. Astrocytomas, glial cell cancers of the brain. Now, why am I so in orbit about this? My husband died of a brain tumor in 1985. And if I can do something to help anybody from developing a brain tumor on what they're eating and drinking and what they're being told is safe and natural and good for them, then I will do it. I worked with 60 Minutes in New York and helped them get interviews and develop a program on aspartame and the risk factors associated with it. That went so well, 60 Minutes from Australia called me and asked me to get some interviews together for them, which I did. They chartered a jet, met me in Washington, chartered a jet, and we flew down the coastline to the southern tip of Virginia, where they interviewed a brain tumor patient who met us at the airport with a shirt on with the international symbol for no, a circle and a slash, NutraSweet. He could barely walk. He was, I think, about 42 years old. I can't tell you how much I identified with his wife. 60 Minutes from Australia was very impressed with him. He had exactly the same kind of brain tumor from aspartame that the lab animals developed. And he died about 6 months later. But his legacy to the world was a wonderful interview where his speech was so slurred that you could barely understand him, but he could say, no NutraSweet. No NutraSweet if you want to live. Aspartame approval was political, all political, not at all about science. Samuel Skinner, the federal prosecutor, we know a little bit about federal prosecutors these days, don't we? They can really go after somebody if they want to. Samuel Skinner was going after the drug company for falsifying the tests that they submitted to the Food and Drug Administration for approval of their pharmaceutical sweetener. Keep in mind, all of this controversy swirling around this pharmaceutical sweetener, and the FDA just sort of closed its eyes and the wheels were greased and that went right through. Stevia, on the other hand, I don't know if you could go to jail for saying it was sweet or putting it too close to the product, the book too close to the product, excuse me. But they did say that he was doing something illegal. They wanted him to burn his book. They put an embargo on his product. Interesting sideline to this story about Stevia Company in Arlington, Texas, and the Rhodes family. Oscar Rhodes owns the patent, the manufacturing patent, on stevia in his native country, Brazil. Guess who owns the U.S. patent on stevia? Monsanto. They bought it up and sat on it. So nobody could have stevia manufactured in this country. They don't want to use it. Back to the 70s. Aspartame was first approved in 1974. That approval was then rescinded because of the brain tumor issue, the DKP. We just can't get away from that. It's a very important issue. The Soft Drink Association did not want to use aspartame in their drinks. And they said, we won't use it. Well, the administration changed, and in 1981, it was approved for use as a tabletop sweetener. And then 2 years later, in 83, for aqueous solution or soft drinks. Now, that prosecutor named Samuel Skinner was prosecuting the pharmaceutical company, G.D. Searle, for falsifying the lab tests. Well, all of a sudden, Mr. Skinner went over to Sidley in Austin, the pharmaceutical company's law firm, and the suit was dropped. A couple of years ago, I was in Washington helping with a news conference conducted by Dr. John Olney and some other people. Dr. Olney is head of brain science at the University of Washington Medical School in St. Louis. He's discovered a 10% rise in brain tumors since the advent of aspartame. Now, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Now remember how adamantly the FDA defends aspartame, and just as adamantly they attack the herb stevia. What's wrong with this picture? I think a lot is wrong with this picture. We need to find out who is giving money to whom, political campaign contributions. We do know that the sweetener industry is a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. So they contribute heavily to organizations like the American Dietetic Association, which is all the registered dietitians. They contribute to the Epilepsy Foundation, to the American Diabetic Association, so that diabetics will not hear anything bad about aspartame. Actually, stevia would be the safety net for diabetics if they would just allow it. What we're looking for here is a choice. We want aspartame recalled and retested as a drug. That's how it was discovered in the first place. I don't think that's asking anything unreasonable. They called a moratorium on silicone implants for women, and I don't know if that was rightfully so or not, but I do know they did it, and 6 times during his news conference, David Kessler said, "We don't know if these implants cause immune deficiency disorders that the women are saying that they cause. We don't know." But to err on the side of caution, we're calling a moratorium. Why didn't they do the same thing for aspartame? I have at least 10,000 people in my database who have contacted me. The Aspartame Consumer Safety Network in Dallas, Texas, is very concerned about this issue. For no pay, for 12 years, I have worked as hard as I can to educate people about this issue. When I went to testify at the Senate hearings in Washington on the safety of this in 1987, I met an F-16 pilot who said, "Mary, why are you doing this? Do you know who you're up against? And kind of basically, are you crazy?" And I said, "Yes, I know who I'm up against, and our fight is really with the Food and Drug Administration, not with the makers of the artificial sweetener, because after all, it has been legally approved. The soft drink manufacturers are using a legally approved product. They're not doing anything illegal. I happen to have Monsanto wear-dated carpet, just for the record, all over my house that I bought a few years ago. I'm not, even if I could wave a magic wand and put somebody out of business, I would not do that. What we're trying to do is call a rogue government agency back into control. It's a corrupted government agency, either by power, by money, by thoughts of jobs in private industry, because they are hopping back and forth. The government officials. Let me tell you, for example, the Food and Drug Administration director who approved aspartame in the early 80s went to work immediately 3 months following the approval for aqueous solution in soft drinks for the NutraSweet PR firm, Burson and Marsteller, for $1,000 a day. Now, we're not against free enterprise. We're not against people making money and having jobs in private industry and all of that, but it does look a little bit suspicious that he, in turn, had his eye on this job. It seems to me, even if it weren't illegal, it's highly immoral. It's highly unethical. Don't you think? I think it is. Children and aspartame. Aspartame is probably a greater danger to children. And when the F-16 pilot asked me why I was doing this, I said, basically, as a parent, to help other parents keep their children away from it. I don't want any other parent to have to go through what I did. It was a chilling nightmare for us. So he said, do it for us too. And I said, what do you mean, do it for us? He said, for the pilots. He said, I'm in the Air Force. Within the Air Force, I can't speak out that much. He said, I'm really putting my career in jeopardy now by coming to these Senate hearings. He said, I had a grand mal seizure just as your youngest child did, and I can't really talk about it too much. And my flying career is over. He said, before the grand mal seizure happened, he knew something was going wrong. He just couldn't quite figure it out. Twice, not once, but twice, he turned down flying with the Thunderbirds. I mean, the most prestigious flying team, acrobatic team in the country. And he said he knew that he couldn't fly wingtip to wingtip with anybody feeling the way he does or did. He was a runner, and he used to rehydrate with a Kool-Aid flavored drink with aspartame in it, and that eventually did his career in, as it has so many other pilots, actually. I met with the Federal Aviation Authority in Washington to describe the problem, and they already knew about it. And I said, guys, what are we going to do about this? And they said, we can't do anything about this, Mary. We cannot go against a fellow agency. He said, we can't recall a drug, or we can't tell them to recall a drug, because that's telling them their business. And I said, well, this pilot suggested that we need a pilot's hotline for anonymous reporting. And these doctors at the FAA said, maybe a university, maybe somebody would do it, maybe. Nobody would do it, so I did it. I started a reporting hotline, and we have had thousands of calls from people, not always the pilot, sometimes the wife, sometimes a relative, or somebody very concerned about them. Sometimes they're doctors. They've gotten a little bit creative about calling it other things. One pilot came to me and said his had been called Korsakoff syndrome, and it was a problem with alcohol, he said. Actually, it was a problem with alcohol, but it was a problem of methyl alcohol, not the other kind. So he went to rehab for 6 weeks and got his license back. Now, when I lectured, I was the first non-MD to lecture last year at one of the top medical schools in this country. And when I lectured and stood before these wonderful doctors, as I'm standing before you now as wonderful scientists and very curious, intelligent people, they were saying, what do we do? You know, I said, what you have to do is ask about aspartame use in your history taking. That would clear up so much. They ask about smoking, they ask about drugs, alcohol. Why not ask one more question? Do you use anything with the artificial sweeteners in it? And what I challenged them to do is ask about this, get the patient off for a period of 4 to 6 weeks, see if the symptoms don't go away. You do this before you start MRIs, CAT scans, all this major testing that costs everybody so much money, whether or not you use the sweetener or not. It is going to be on your tab, some of this money spent on all this testing. It's just like we are ultimately responsible for the people with lung cancer. The people who have brain tumors, heart attacks, other kinds of illness from aspartame very often lose their jobs. I have a lot of people who are on disability who call me. 4 kinds of tumors developed in the lab animals: brain tumors, breast tumors, pancreatic tumors, and uterine tumors. 92 symptoms have been reported associated with aspartame use. Very, very high risk factors here. We're talking about fibromyalgia, lupus, chronic fatigue, lymphoma, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Many, many kinds of things are either triggered or exacerbated by this pharmaceutical sweetener. One doctor told me a couple of weeks ago, it's easy to explain why this covers a myriad of symptoms. Because he said, imagine how this would have been taken off the market the first couple of years if it just created one or two symptoms. He said it has to create damaging effects in every organ of the body to stay on the market. The head of brain science at MIT and the heads of brain science at many universities and medical schools say that aspartame, specifically the phenylalanine in aspartame, lowers production of serotonin. Serotonin is what keeps our sleep patterns normal, what keeps our moods stable. Menstrual cycles in females are regulated and kept normal by serotonin. 3 Marines were let go from the Marine Corps because they were too aggressive. They were being very hostile and aggressive. And the Corps didn't want them any longer. And when they were tested, all 3 of them had very low levels of serotonin. Now, why are all these people put now on antidepressants? It's, I think, and our researchers, more importantly, believe that it's due to the fact that aspartame blocks serotonin levels. The phenylalanine in aspartame can block it. So tryptophan, on paper, would be the antidote to aspartame. And Prozac and some of these other pharmaceutical drugs would be too. We don't suggest that. Children's prescriptions, children's medications, their vitamins, over-the-counter drugs for kids have aspartame. Now, why is that? A friend of mine said, Mary, when I was a little girl, my mother would give me castor oil, and I took it. She said, was it sweet? No. But I took it anyway because my mother said I had to. I don't know why we have to use a seizure agent in children's medications, pain medications, for example, that they're given when they have a high fever and they have a seizure and they say, well, it's because they were sick. We started a brain tumor registry with a top researcher, and we're collecting brain tumor cases. But the bad thing is the patients usually die before anything can be done to report their reaction. So it's up to the spouse ultimately. The action agenda we suggest is to tell everybody you know about this issue and about this topic. Get it out of the closet. You know, for a long time, nobody wanted to talk about it. It was as if people were ashamed of having a reaction. Take it back to the store. If you've bought a product that's making you sick, take it back to the store. Exchange it for something healthy. I guarantee you the store manager will take it back, no questions asked. And not only that, but they don't bear the cost of this. What they do is pass it on to the manufacturer. And the manufacturer is where we want it passed on to. Share this information with your doctor. We've compiled a 200-page document here of research over the past 12 years. I have worked hard in the medical school libraries to come up with this. It's called The Deadly Deception, and this is our fundraiser. Somebody says, do you get money from the sugar lobby, the saccharin people? Anybody? Even the stevia people? No. I have not taken a penny from any of those people. But this is our fundraiser, and if you want to help us, you might consider doing somebody you know a favor and giving it to them and doing us a favor too. I want to thank you for coming today, and I want to tell you that what we need to do is get a choice for those who want it. We need to get this approved as what it is, a real food, an herb. And we need to take a second look at this and put the brakes on and say, enough is enough. Food and Drug Administration needs to listen to us. We're the boss. They're not the boss. We pay their salaries. And I'm sure this tape will end up being viewed by people at the Food and Drug Administration and being viewed by people in the boardrooms of Monsanto and the people who produce products, manufacture products with this sweetener in them. And I want to say again, I'm not trying to put anybody out of business, but please, please, go back to a safer sweetener. If you can't find one, just don't produce anything with aspartame in it. And watch out for neotame, that sweetener 2000. And everybody's talking about the millennium bug. We got a sweetener bug headed our way. And it will get approved. As hard as they fight stevia, the little herb, that's how hard they defend these other pharmaceutical drugs. I want to thank you for coming and for your patience. You're a great audience. Thank you. Yes, questions? Yes.
Yes, I understand that stevia is a leaf from a tree, and it's about 200 to 300% sweeter than sugar.
It is 200 to 400 times sweeter than sugar. That's correct. It isn't a tree. It's a bush. It was the Guarani Indians in Paraguay used it for centuries with no adverse reactions. There are no studies showing that it's harmed anybody. It grows wild in Brazil. In Canada, they're growing it, and right now in Canada, I'm told they have 15 researchers looking into it, and they're about to approve it as a food in Canada, or as a grass substance, we call it, generally recognized as safe.
Do you know how many current products have the aspartame and the other one that you mentioned?
Yes, over 5,000 products now contain aspartame. People call me all the time asking for a list. There's no such thing. Not only would it be foolish to try to produce a list of 5,000 products, but it changes day to day. Now you see it, now you don't. Some vitamins for children have it, some don't. Augmentin, for example, which is a very popular antibiotic for infants in the suspension form, I want to be sure I get this right. The 125 milligram form doesn't have it. The 200 milligram form of Augmentin for infants and children has it, and the 250 milligram dose doesn't have it. Now you see it, now you don't. But guess which one pediatricians are now pushing? And I had a pediatrician get very, very angry with me when I suggested that she prescribe the 125 dose or the 250 dose and just give it, make allowances for the times of day that you give it. She said, oh, you just don't want anybody on aspartame. I said, I certainly don't want children and infants on it.
How long does the person have to take it in a product before they can experience problems?
How long does the person have to smoke to get a stroke, a heart attack, lung cancer? The answer is we don't know. Some people immediately react. They get headaches immediately, and I do talk shows all over the country, and when I get a call like that, I love it because I say, why wasn't I that lucky? Why didn't I have a headache the first time I used it? Then I would have quit using it and wouldn't have developed eosinophilia, the life-threatening blood disorder. The people who develop a symptom immediately from it, dizziness, nausea, gastrointestinal problems, or headaches, are the lucky ones. They can identify, but you don't get a brain tumor overnight. You don't drink a diet soda and then get a brain tumor on one can. It's very, very similar to the tobacco industry's denial that their product causes harm. Same issue, it's just a parallel.
Does it build up and accumulate and then become a toxic substance at that time, or is it toxic to begin with?
Aspartame breaks down and leaves the body within a certain period of time. Methanol leaves the body, for example, within 48 hours of ingestion. But if you're ingesting it every day, imagine the eye, the liver, the pancreas, all the organs are damaged, and the effect is cumulative. It isn't that the substance accumulates in the body necessarily. It may, and I could be proven wrong by some of you here, if you show me that it hangs around in the cells, for a long period of time. But the damage goes on, and I'm here to tell you that I know the damage because I sustained damage from it. If you biopsied my muscles, the tissues would show damage. I can't hold my hand straight anymore. And I wasn't that way before I joined Weight Watchers and used aspartame. So I'm here to tell you, you don't know what it can do, but it can do things that you don't want to happen, and you can't always reverse it.
What about some of the other sweeteners like sorbitol and some I can't think of right now?
Well, we have our hands full with aspartame right now, although sucralose is a new sweetener. It's called Splenda, and what it is sucrose with 3 chlorine atoms added. Asulfame K is something that I have reports on showing that it causes cancer, and asulfame K and aspartame are being mixed in the new soft drink Pepsi 1. Diet Pepsi said all of a sudden their diet drinks aren't sweet enough, and so they had to mix aspartame with something else. I think they're trying to minimize their liability, personally.
Did all of these things start, when I was a kid, I remember the cyclamates in Kool-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to be
I
the time.
think when we get away from the natural stuff, when we get away from, for example, sugar, which everybody used to eat. I'm not saying everybody needs to go back to sugar necessarily, but I'm saying we have come so far that we're scared to death, literally, of a spoonful of sugar, and we will go to any length to avoid it. And sometimes when you avoid real products, real sugar and real fat, you run into the waiting jaws of the fake stuff. And it's like eating polyester. We don't have plastic bodies, so we don't eat plastic foods.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad that you're getting the word out about this. I've been using stevia and lots of other natural sweeteners for a long time.
Good for you. I want to say again, I get no money from the stevia people. I don't even use stevia in my drinks. I don't sweeten my drinks. But I think for those people who want a choice, they need to have that choice. Yes?
What about aspartame and birth defects?
Aspartame, as shown in this book, the Birth Defect Association has written a whole paper on birth defects and aspartame. It crosses the placenta, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, has wood alcohol in it, it crosses and quadruples on the side of the placenta and is capable of causing birth defects. That's why many doctors who wouldn't tell most patients to get off of it do warn pregnant women to stay away from it and err on the side of caution, and that's pretty good advice. Thank you. Yes?
I have a question. Do you know the distribution of this product across the planet? Are there particular countries or nations that this product is being pushed on the people?
Yes, we believe that as the tobacco industry saw its profits diminishing in this country as word got out about the liability associated and the risk factors associated with tobacco use, now they're taking it to third world countries. People who aren't maybe so informed, it's not that they're stupid and not intelligent, they're just not informed about this issue. And we believe that the aspartame people the makers of these products, are indeed following the tobacco industry's their line and their method of operation, and they are taking it to the third world countries, so-called third world countries. It is going out into the rest of the world. In Brazil, it's called Sweetie, I believe. I've got a packet at home, and it's called Natura Taste, Natura Sweet, Canderel in Europe. It's called by various names, but yes, it is being pushed out into the rest of the world. And the thing that really is the most troubling to me is that nobody who's selling it says, let's keep kids away from it.
The manufacturers of these products, they're clearly aware of the dangers?
Oh, yes. They have all been notified. It's out there on the internet. We aren't the only organization battling with the Food and Drug Administration to take this back and take a second look at it. There are many groups, many websites. And by the way, our website is web2.airmail.net/Mary Stodd. And I work a lot by email and work with people all over the world. We just exhibited at the National Natural Foods Association marketplace in San Antonio this past week. And I had people from Canada, New Zealand, Australia, countries all over the world where we have been working and educating people and doing media exposure come up to me and say, I'm so glad to meet you. One guy from New Zealand said, I've memorized your website. He said, I quote it to everybody I talk to. And that was a very humbling experience for me, because I do see that the word is getting out, just not fast enough.
One final question. What can be done to reverse the damage caused by this product?
That's where I turn people over to the experts. I am not an expert on that. I am considered and have been qualified in courtroom proceedings as an expert on aspartame. But beyond that, I don't know. I would just guess that healthy living, good exercise, good diet, eat real food, drink real water. If you have sodas, just make them a treat and a rarity in your life. Drink fruit juices and truly natural stuff, herbal teas and things. But there are healthcare professionals out there, and possibly some in this room today, who have very good answers for people on how they can recuperate. The body is a wonderful thing, though, and attempts to heal itself. When damage is done to it, sometimes stupidly by those of us who unknowingly do damage to our bodies. And they do. Bodies will try to correct and repair the damage if we'll just let it.
Have you heard that very tiny amounts can cause problems of aspartame?
When we get into amounts, we're in a very gray area here, because what I was told by a researcher is it's a tolerance level. Some people can drink one glass of wine and be under the table, and others can drink a fifth of Jim Beam, and not appear to be inebriated. It's all in the way your body handles it. It's all in the stress factors in your life at the time. There are a lot of variables, and people who are using it now with seemingly no negative effects will not know when they will be pushed over the edge. And so no one using it now who is asymptomatic should be smug at all about that fact, because sooner or later it can happen to you. Yes, one more.
Have you heard of the product called Fruit Source? It's a substitute sweetener instead of sugar for diabetics.
Yes.
For baking, it comes in a powdered and also kind of a thick syrup type of format. And
yeah, it's really good. I've tasted it.
Also, for other people, no one's talked about raw honey. I guess that's also very healthy for you.
I would think raw honey. I have a list here: maple syrup, sucanat, the raw sugars, better than the refined. Fruits, fruit juice concentrates, maple rice barley syrups, applesauce. You have to be creative. It isn't always easy. And don't forget there's a banned cookbook up here that everybody but Stevia Company can sell it now. And it's Cooking with Stevia. You got to tell people the amounts and how to use it and how much to use it.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I understand Nutrasweet is banned in Japan. Is that correct?
That's what I hear. I haven't fully confirmed that fact, but I believe it is.
What I've heard that in Japan, Stevia is as popular as Nutrasweet is here in the U.S.
That's correct. And that, to me, is a great irony because Ajinomoto and some other manufacturers of amino acids used to produce the amino acids for aspartame and ship them to this country. So funny, they became very informed, and I think to their advantage, I think we should follow their lead. Yes. Class action lawsuits are not going to be the way to go, in my opinion, because you've got people with headaches lumped in with people with brain tumors. And in class actions, typically, you get about a very small settlement. The breast implant people are only, and I say only, getting $30,000 each. But that's a very small class. This class would be much larger. And lawsuits, Monsanto has a gatekeeper on the Supreme Court. Judge Clarence Thomas is a former Monsanto attorney. So lawsuits aren't going to go very far. I know, I'm a former judge. I was an appointed judge for 7 years on the Texas court. It is. It's, everybody has to, like I say, get this out of the closet, start talking about it. And then, with the tobacco industry, we go back to that again, it will fall. We're seeing that now. Their profits are diminishing drastically, and they're scrambling. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.